It was a quiet, overcast morning when Kiet arrived at the lumber yard. With clipboard in hand and a calm, steady pace, he made his way through the rows of neatly stacked timber. Today's agenda was simple. Check on the last set of tasks he had assigned to Nam, the newest worker at the yard. Nam had been working there for just over a month. Young, soft-spoken, and seemingly hard-working, he had quickly earned a reputation for being diligent and respectful. Kiet, always attentive to good labor, had taken notice and had even begun considering promoting him to full-time. Still, there was something that nagged at the back of Kiet's mind. A sense of familiarity about Nam he couldn't quite place. But between work demands and his personal responsibilities, especially everything related to Tu Nha, he hadn't had the time to dwell on it. As Kiet approached, Nam looked up from his task and greeted him with a courteous nod. "Hey, Nam," Kiet began, his voice warm but firm. "How's everything going with the lumber I assigned you?" Nam straightened up, wiping his hands on a towel tucked into his belt. "It's all been sorted and stacked just as you instructed. I double-checked the inventory too." Kiet glanced around, scanning the area with his experienced eye. Everything did look in order. "Good. You've been here a month now. What's your impression of the place? Think you'd want to keep working here?" Nam offered a polite smile. "Honestly, it's been a good place to work. The job suits me, and it lets me stay close to my wife and child. That means a lot to me." Kiet nodded, pleased with the response. "Glad to hear it. Starting next month, I'm making you official. You'll be on staff as a full-time employee. And here, this is your salary for this month." He handed Nam an envelope, standard for temporary workers until their banking paperwork cleared. Nam accepted it with both hands, bowing his head slightly in gratitude. "Thank you, sir," he said, his voice low. "No need for that," Kiet replied with a small chuckle. "Just keep working hard." As their brief conversation ended, Kiet turned and headed back to his office. He had no idea, no inkling at all, that the man he had just promoted, the one he had just handed money to, was in fact the same man who had once broken Tu Nha's heart. Nam, Tu Nha's ex-husband, had somehow found his way into Kiet's business, right under his nose. Nam stood still for a moment, watching Kiet walk away. His expression remained calm, neutral even. But once Kiet was out of sight, a faint, unsettling smile crept onto Nam's lips. It wasn't the smile of someone grateful for a promotion. It was the smile of someone who believed he had just pulled off the perfect deception. To Nam, it was a quiet victory. Here he was, working directly under the man who had stepped in to support his former wife and child, the man Tu Nha now seemed to care about. And yet, despite the proximity, Kiet still hadn't recognized him. Not once had Kiet asked any probing questions. Not once had he looked closely enough to suspect anything. Nam had taken on a new name, kept a low profile, and let time and routine mask his presence. And it had worked, so far. But beneath that surface, Nam's motives weren't so innocent. He hadn't come to the lumber yard just for the job. His return wasn't about redemption. It was about proximity, getting closer to Tu Nha, to his child, and yes, perhaps even reclaiming something he thought he had lost, or at the very least, disrupting what she had found. Kiet, ever the focused professional, had simply seen him as another worker trying to earn a living. And for now, that was all Nam needed him to see. As Kiet drove off later that day, thinking nothing more of their exchange, Nam watched the truck disappear down the dusty road. He exhaled slowly, eyes narrowing. One step at a time, he thought, one step closer. Back at the office, Kiet sat at his desk, thumbing through reports, still completely unaware of the looming storm. He thought about Tu Nha and her daughter, about the life he had slowly been building with them. Quietly, respectfully, without pressure. It was a fragile beginning, but one he cherished. And as he signed off on Nam's promotion paperwork, there wasn't even a flicker of suspicion. But sooner or later, the truth would have to surface. Secrets like that never stayed buried for long. And when that moment came, Kiet would be forced to confront a betrayal deeper than he ever expected. After wrapping up his work at the lumber yard, Kiet didn't head straight home. Instead, he made a quick stop at the local market, carefully choosing a few of Tu Nha's favorite dishes, some grilled skewers, her favorite tofu with herbs, and a small bag of warm, sticky rice wrapped in banana leaves. It was nothing fancy, but he knew she'd had a long day, and he wanted to bring her a bit of comfort. When he arrived at her place, the house was quiet. Her daughter must have still been napping, and Tu Nha herself hadn't returned yet from her job. Kiet didn't mind. He placed the food on the table, took off his shoes, and waited outside on the small bench beneath the awning. The sun was starting to dip, casting a soft amber hue across the yard. The air was calm, and so was his heart. Not long after, the metal gate creaked open. Tu Nha appeared, slightly breathless, a canvas tote slung over one shoulder, her steps quick and eager. The moment her eyes met Kiet's, a smile bloomed across her face. Gentle, familiar, and deeply warm. He stood up, mirroring her smile, and for a second, neither of them said a word. It was enough just to see each other. "You waited long?" she asked, walking over. "Not too long," he replied, handing her the bag of food. "I brought you dinner. Figured you might not have had time to cook." Her eyes lit up with gratitude. "You really didn't have to. But thank you. I've had the craziest day." They both sat down, and Tu Nha opened the bag, her face softening even more as she peeked inside. "You remembered I like this sticky rice," she said with a laugh. "I haven't had this in ages." "I remember," he said simply. There was a pause, not awkward, but comfortable. Then Kiet glanced at her, his voice a little quieter this time. "So, has he come by recently, your ex?" Tu Nha's expression shifted only slightly, serene, unaffected. "No," she said, shaking her head. "Not for a while now. Honestly, I don't even pay attention anymore. Whether he shows up or not, it doesn't matter to me." Kiet didn't respond right away. He looked at her, really looked at her, and in that moment, he felt a wave of quiet relief wash over him. There was no bitterness in her voice, no pain, just peace. She had moved on, and maybe, just maybe, she was making room for someone new, someone like him. "That's good," he said finally. "You deserve better than what he gave you." She glanced at him, a knowing look in her eyes. "I know, and I'm learning that now." The two sat there under the softening sky, talking, eating, and laughing. The heaviness that had once hung in the air between them, born from the past, from hurt, from uncertainty, seemed to lift, little by little. Kiet found himself leaning back, smiling more freely than he had in weeks. He didn't have to fight for space in her life. He was already in it, in the most natural way. Tu Nha wiped her hands and stood, motioning toward the front steps. "Come sit with me. It's cooler over there." He followed, and they sat side by side, watching the light fade and the first stars begin to peek out from the deepening blue sky. Somewhere in the background, a neighbor's radio played an old ballad, and crickets started their nightly song. "You know, she said softly. "When I first met you, I didn't think you'd become such a big part of my life." "Me neither," Kiet admitted, chuckling. "I just wanted to fix a roof." She laughed, a light, melodic sound. "And now you're feeding me sticky rice after a long day. Next time, I'll bring dessert too." The night wore on, and the two of them stayed there, lost in a world of their own. There was no need for grand gestures or sweeping declarations. Everything they needed to say was in the way they looked at each other, in the warmth of shared silences, in the ease of their company. Kiet's thoughts wandered briefly to Nam, Tu Nha's ex-husband, the man who, unbeknownst to him, now worked under his supervision at the lumber yard. He didn't know the full truth yet. He didn't know the tangled web that fate was silently weaving behind their backs. But in this moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was the way Tu Nha's head gently leaned toward his shoulder, how she sighed with comfort instead of exhaustion, and how her laughter came so easily when she was around him. It wasn't a love story that began with fire and thunder. It was one built on quiet evenings, thoughtful gestures, and trust earned one small act at a time. For now, that was more than enough. And as the stars multiplied overhead, Kiet knew one thing for certain. Whatever challenges came their way, whatever truths were still hiding in the shadows, he would face them, as long as it meant protecting this peace, this happiness, this woman. Because sometimes, the strongest love isn't loud. It's patient. It waits in silence, steady and sure, until the right heart finally opens its door.
Kiệt lặng lẽ rời khỏi nhà Tử Nha, từng bước chân như mang theo cả nỗi nặng trĩu trong lòng, trái tim như vụn vỡ. Anh không đi xa, chỉ đến một góc vắng trên đường, nơi có bóng cây tre, rồi ngồi thụp xuống, gục đầu giữa hai đầu gối. Trong khoảnh khắc ấy, thế giới xung quanh như mờ nhòe. Anh siết chặt hai bàn tay, từng lời Tử Nha nói vẫn vang bên tai. "Nếu em nói với anh rằng chồng cũ của em đã trở về, anh có tin không?" Chưa kịp nói ra thì tình cảm đã chôn chặt trong lòng bấy lâu. Chưa kịp cô cho biết rằng mình luôn ở bên, rằng anh thật lòng, thì tất cả sẽ rẽ sang một hướng khác. Anh muốn hét lên, muốn trút cạn nỗi đau trong lòng, và rồi không kìm được nữa, Kiệt bật khóc nức nở, tiếng nấc nghẹn ngào giữa trưa hè vắng lặng. Anh ấy thấy mình thật nhỏ bé, bất lực. Giờ đây anh phải đối diện với sự thật này ra sao? Phải đối mặt như thế nào với Tử Nha, người anh thương? Với người đàn ông kia, người từng là chồng của cô, hàng loạt câu hỏi cứ như thế xoay quanh tâm trí. Liệu cô sẽ chọn quay về quá khứ hay bước tiếp về phía trước? Còn anh, liệu có một chỗ đứng nào trong cuộc sống của mẹ con cô nữa không? Chẳng ai biết trước được điều gì, nhưng ngay lúc này Kiệt chỉ có thể ngồi đó, để nước mắt tuôn rơi như một cách thoát khỏi nỗi đau bóp nghẹt trái tim mình. Và rồi cuộc đời họ sẽ đi về đâu?